Tassenball. At some point on Saturday night, we're going to play some football on Sunday up in the Berg. I will be in Pittsburgh at Heinz Field for all things Ravens and Steelers. But there are other stories in the big city, including the Caps, who I'm checking out. The Terps are going to play some football on Monday out in Detroit against Boston College. And the Big Boy Turtles were in Baltimore on Tuesday night at the Royal Farms Arena, making their once-a-year stop and taking care of business against Charlotte. This guy, longtime basketball coach, player, and now an analyst. Many, many years. I think it's 17 if I did the math. Chris Nocky joins us here, ex-coach Nocky out on Twitter and all things Terrapins. Chris, you coached for a long time. It may sound like, well, it's no big deal that they're 12-1. Look at some of the competition. It's always a big deal when you're sitting down on Christmas Day and you're 12-1, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of folks out there, Nestor, that would love to switch places. And even in the league, you think about some of the mixed results that we've seen in the Big Ten, and, Michigan State is not your father's Michigan State just yet, and there are some teams that have taken it on the chin a little bit. So there are a number of teams that would love to be sitting at that number right now.
Well, all right. So, let's talk about Tuesday and let's go backwards because none of these first 13 games matter so much. You like to learn a little bit from the pit loss, but, here comes the big boys, right? Here comes conference play. Couple of easier games to sort of, wind into this thing. You get to stay at home a little bit through the holidays and through New Year's Day. But this thing will get treacherous, but maybe not as treacherous. Certainly, a bunch of these teams are not as well thought of as maybe they were last year, including Maryland. I know Purdue, Wisconsin, Indiana, they're the ranked teams. You always got to look out for Michigan State, but it feels like it's sitting there and that Maryland could be one of those teams certainly in the mix here, and certainly they feel like a team that's going to be playing in the tournament at some point in March, right?
Yeah, you certainly hope so. Ultimately that's the goal. But one of the things that we've learned about playing in this particular league is that, and the ACC was obviously it was a thrill ride, and anytime you got a chance to play Duke and Carolina, even NC State to a degree, Virginia sometimes, those were great games, and they were always a lot of fun. But for every one of those games, you had a couple of games where you were playing Boston College on a Tuesday night or Florida State on a Thursday night. Nobody was around. There wasn't a whole lot of buzz, a whole lot of energy.
How about when you went down to Miami in some of those days where there's, 2,800 people in the big gym down there and, it's 90 degrees outside and everybody rather be out, sitting on the beach, right?
Yeah, and to that point, one of the things that we found in the Big Ten was, while the level of play from top to bottom might not be what it is in the ACC when you consider how good Duke and Carolina are on a regular basis and UVA now. But when you go on the road, every game is an immense game in that town. These are college towns that support their teams, whether they're good or bad. You go to Lincoln, Nebraska on a snowy Wednesday night, there's going to be 16,000 people in the building. So, the league is it's a tough place to play on the road.
Well, they found that out in Minnesota last year. I had seen one game out there, 18 years ago. The day before I met Brian Billick, I flew out on a plane for that championship Vikings-Falcons Dirty Bird game, and Minnesota was playing Iowa that day, right? Clem Haskins and the good doctor, and the raised floor and all that. And we went to the barn, and I just knew it was a bunch of big white guys that played in the Big Ten. That's all I knew about the Big Ten in 1998, And I walked into that gym, and it was like a Hoosiers experience, I couldn't believe how energetic it was, how much fun it was. And when I saw Maryland go out there last year and the kids crying after they win and they hadn't won a game, and I'm thinking, this Big Ten thing, I think it's going to grow on people around here because it is a fun brand of basketball. It's not fun going to Ohio State and Michigan to play football, but on the basketball side, this has been a good transition. I kind of like it, quite frankly.
Yeah, no, it's been great, and with the expansion of the ACC, people are always going to romanticize the Duke and Carolina games over the years, but with the expansion of the ACC, we would only see them at Xfinity Center once every couple or 3 years, and so that sort of takes the romance out of it for me. If we had been still playing a balanced schedule in the ACC, they might have been a little different leaving there, but I think. In terms of, let's make no mistake about it, money was the root of the decision, and I get that. But, all in all, having made the transition, it's been, I think, positive probably like 99% of the way.
Did you hate it in the beginning when you heard the first time that the whisper came to you? Hey, Chris, we need some more money here in the Big Ten. The Midwest, and they want us because we're in DC. When you hear that 7-8 years ago, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of made everybody like sort of get hivey, didn't it? And now,
Yeah,
that it's done,
but
it doesn't.
But I got to tell you, Nestor, if you were sitting on the board of trustees and the economics of the deal were put in front of you, where we could stay here and get this, or go there and get that, you probably would have been fired for malfeasance if you hadn't said, yeah, we got to go. The money was that dramatic, and you know what? I've been around college sports forever. I started as a player in 1976, then became a coach right after I got done playing. I get how decisions are driven by things like this, and when the delta is so big in between what you have and what you could have, it makes no sense to stay where you are.
He is Chris Naki. He has done college basketball all of his life as a player, a coach, and now a longtime broadcaster on the Terps Radio Network. And you can follow his journey out on Twitter as well at ex-coach Naki. And all right, so for how the team has played and the Charlotte game, the one thing that I think every Terps fan who's even followed on the periphery and trying to figure out who the big redheaded kid is and who the Canadian kid is, and we're still trying to work all that out after getting to know the Suleimans and the Carters and the Diamond Stones for all 12 weeks they were here. One thing about this is when you watch them, you say, well, these kids are going to be here a couple of years. So he's committed to playing the younger kids, which is understandable. You also see that they struggled early against Towson. They struggled early against Charlotte on Tuesday night. They struggled early a couple of weeks ago against the likes of Stony Brook. So then you say, well, how's that going to play on a Tuesday night against Illinois or whatever, right?
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to that. To be honest with you, the reason that the young kids are playing is not just because they're guys that you expect to be around for a number of years. They're having been to practice in October and November, they're better basketball players than what came before them, and they deserve to be playing. Now what you get with that, with that youth, is you get guys. You're going to get some, a little bit of a roller coaster. It's not always going to be smooth, but when you look at what Kevin Herter can do, on this past Tuesday against Charlotte, he came out in the second half and had 10 points in the blink of an eye after not scoring in the first half. So you look at what they're capable of doing, and you have to ride those waves a little bit, Nestor. You have to, you're going to be going through some head-scratching moments, but you just got to deal with it and believe at the end of the day you're going to have a hell of a lot more positive than negative. And that's been the case, in the first 13 games for sure.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about it that the last 10 minutes of any game, in most games, there are going to be 5 points, 7 points, one way or the other. Melo Trimble, the minutes that Turge has got on him, and you've mentioned these cold nights and these much longer trips, and, last year, the fact that he deteriorated, got injured, things went awry. Nothing went right after January 15th last year for Melo. The fact that he came back and some of the other guys got their feelings hurt on draft day, and he's certainly in a position to go make a lot of money. He's in a position to be a leader on this team, but he's also he's going to be the guy, and that's that. I mean, he's the guy I want to see with the ball in the last 2 minutes either way, and he looks really comfortable with that right now, right?
Yeah, and he's one of the great closers I've ever seen. I don't have the number in front of me, Nestor. I want to say that in games decided by 6 points or less in his career, and that's just 2 seasons plus a handful of games now, 2.5 seasons basically. He's 25-6. Now, when you get into college basketball, when as it applies to close games, you hope to win your share. Well, your share is usually 50%. And he's hitting over 80%. And if it happens over the course of maybe 6 or 8 games, it's a small sample size. It's no big deal. But that's 30-plus games. And so, he's one of the really great winners in Maryland basketball history. And you're right. He struggled down the stretch last year. That's one of the reasons that, that his team did.
That
And they
felt to me to be
probably,
physical as much as you know what I mean. When you're physically not right in that
yeah.
position, in that league, in that spot, the horse has to be healthy. Period. To win.
Yeah, yeah, and yet even with that, and he had back and hamstring issues last year, and even with that, he was able to cobble together. He dropped 24 on Hawaii to get this team to the Sweet 16. So, even with the injuries last year, he was a very dynamic player. It's a shame that it did curtail his capabilities, no question about it. But I love the fact that he's on. I hate to say we, us, and our, but he's on our side. I like that, and there's a lot to be said for having a closer like Melo.
He is Chris Nockey. He has covered Maryland basketball for a couple decades now, calling the games on the radio, along with the great Johnny Holiday, amongst others. The Baltimore thing. I didn't go to the game Tuesday night. I went last year. Tuesday, I had a show. We did a swabbing and a canned food drive for the holidays with C.J. Mosley. We were up in Aberdeen at Adams Jeep. We had some fun up there. Of course, we got a pretty big football game here this week, Chris, as you know.
Yep.
And so I didn't make the game, and it wasn't for lack of planning or trying. It's just kind of the way it rolled. Last year, I went to the game. I felt like there was a hell of a lot of energy there last year. They're always trying in Baltimore, right? And I know I've talked to you about Bino and my relationship with him and recruiting, and they got the kid from St. Joe now to come down there and play next year. They've always tried in Baltimore, whether it was Bob Wade, the Keith Booth thing, the whole you lived through all the John Thompson era with the Wingates and Muggsy and all that stuff. I mean, I'm 48 years old. They're still not Baltimore's team, kind of, sort of, and I don't know what's going to change that, and I don't know that, even Gary was ever really committed to it in that way. They come up, they doff their cap, they stop by, they say hello, but there's more money in Washington, and there's to the point of that is it wasn't a bigger game, it wasn't a full house. I'd like to see them come up here once a year, like they did 20 years ago, and play Massachusetts or play Oklahoma or play a big game and make it something where it sells out and there's energy. I hate when they come in on a Tuesday and they leave, and some people on Wednesday say, "Oh, I didn't realize they played in Baltimore on Tuesday night."
Yeah, the difference between last year, the game you were at, and this year, they're pretty significant. Last year the Princeton game was played on a Saturday
night. Yep.
Princeton travels pretty well themselves. They've got a tradition of basketball success, and so they bring some of their own people. It's not very far from Princeton either.
It's also a game you're afraid of losing too, quite frankly, right?
Yeah, well, it ended up being a top 50 win for Maryland because Princeton had a hell of a year from that point forward. So, when you so last year, I think the crowd was a little over 11. Earlier this week, they were saying, I think they said the crowd was 7,100, 7,200. I don't count people, but didn't feel like there was nearly the vibe or the energy. But I do know this, that if the only way you make Baltimore, a Maryland town is you got to get up there. You got to go there, and just paying lip service to it will never do it. So you have to make the effort. And you got to credit Mark Turgeon and his staff for for scheduling the game up there the last 2 years. I think they want to make that an ongoing thing, and I would love to see it on a weekend. That's a big deal to me.
Of course,
Baltimore.
1,000,000%, sure.
And then the other thing is to get some sort of a connection with that game. I thought Princeton was a great game for them to play.
They could play any ACC team, right? Any Florida State, any Wake, anyone. If that were an ACC throwback game every year, or something that had some sort of pit, some local thing. It would be a big, even if they played Navy, right? Just to say that, but I'd love to see that for Baltimore, for the program, because, dude, I'm 25 years into doing sports radio. No one in College Park cares that you come on the radio with me. No, literally, no one there has ever really cared about Baltimore other than, Debbie would schedule a game up here with Georgia Tech for football if Art Modell would pay for it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And there was, and Art did pay for it, through the nose, quite frankly. So I'd love to see that, but I've been waiting my whole life for that. And I'm not anti-Maryland. I got Terps underwear around here, older than Kevin Herter, But
thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing that information. I appreciate that. But I mean, to my, I really have enjoyed the last couple of years getting up there. I remember my first or second year doing this, we played Iowa up there in the ACC Big Ten Challenge back when we were in the ACC. And I remember vividly, one of the really great Maryland events I was ever at was a Maryland Navy football game up there. And it went right down to the last couple of plays. Maryland ended up eking out a win, but I like the idea, and Navy would be a natural on either playing football or basketball. I like the idea. I think it'll continually grow. The problem is in this day and age, coaches don't like to give away home games, and so you have to be you have to be pretty judicious about the game that you're scheduling up there. It's not as easy, I think, as sometimes fans seem to think it is.
Chris, make a case for the team going through the Big Ten here, and at this sort of gaudy record where they are. If they were to beat Illinois, beat Nebraska, they got to go out to Michigan. They'll be an underdog in that game. But I mean, they might be 14-1. They might be 14-2 or 15-1 by the time they see Indiana, and that's going to be a ginormous game, right? I mean, on the 10th of January, they get Indiana coming into the gym, and I'm sure Harbaugh will be down. The whole deal, and make a case that they can beat Indiana. Purdue, Wisconsin, some of the better teams this year.
Well, I think the case is simply this. They have one of the great players, not just guards or point guards, one of the great players in all of college basketball, Melo Trimble. They've got three freshmen that are going to continue to get better with every spoonful that they're fed. They're very dynamic players and guys who are playing 25, 30 minutes a game. And they've got just enough size and big size to be able to compete with some of the bigger teams in the Big Ten. So I think between Mark Turgeon has, and I don't know why people run hot and cold on him. I read some of the Maryland message boards, and it leaves me scratching.
Dude, you can't do that. I mean, you read the message boards about Belichick. There are people in New England that don't think he wins enough. You know what I mean? Joe Madden probably wore his tie wrong, something in the parade. I mean, welcome to my world. This is so. I mean,
all he does is win close games, and so I think that if you take care of business at home in the Big Ten, and then you take your chances on the road. The schedule is pretty favorable, and I think this team will be far better in March than it is right now. Right now, they're 12-1, Nestor. I mean, there's nothing to sneeze at.
I got to tell you this little Big Ten story. Last year, we were at the Combine in Indianapolis, and we looked down on the schedule. And I was hoping Maryland was playing Indiana or something like that because I haven't been to Bloomington yet, but I'll get there. And it turned out to be the weekend that Maryland was playing at Mackey in Purdue. And I Googled it out, and I said, it's only 50 miles. I thought it was an hour away. I thought it might have been an hour and a half, but because I'd driven that road up to Chicago one time. So we got in the car on that Saturday morning and went to Mackey. And I'm going to tell you what, I walked in there, and I'm a wooden guy, right? Dick Vitale was calling the game that day. The big circles there. I saw Johnny, and I saw Bino, and the little area down where you guys have the locker room and whatnot. And I walked into there, and I'm like, man, this Big Ten thing's fun. And I had never in my life thought that I wanted to see a basketball game in Purdue. Don't ask, I'd never been to Cameron, I've been to a bunch of college gyms, but that's just one of the ones that I was not on my bucket list or whatever. Now I tell anyone, man, if you haven't seen a basketball game at Mackey in Purdue, and I know, you being a long-time, East Coast guy, it may have been one of your very few visits into there as well, right?
Yeah, I'd had a chance to do some games in there. When I first joined Maryland, I was doing some games for CBS and the other outlets. So I'd been in there a few times, but they've redone it, and it's better than it's ever been. They're basketball psycho there in that whole state. And the two times that we've played there since we've joined the league, we won one, we lost one, but they were both parties. I mean, it was just a great atmosphere, and that's true for. You talk about going to Bloomington. That's right along the lines of Cameron. You go to some of these places and you just can't believe the support and the environment that you're playing in all these places.
Don Marcus told me I need to go to Nebraska and see a basketball game. I almost went for a football game a couple weeks ago when we got skunked out there Thanksgiving week. I had a flight. I just didn't do it. My wife couldn't do it. We were playing in Dallas on Sunday, the Ravens, so I didn't do it. But he said, go for a basketball game. He said, it's great. You'll love Lincoln, Nebraska. And I'm thinking, okay.
It's a great town. It's a great town, a beautiful, gleaming new building. probably built largely on football money. But boy, they come out and support that team. There's not a seat to be had. It's a great event, great night, great environment. And then you can go out into Lincoln, and it's really one of the fun college towns you'll ever get to or be able to walk around. It's a great environment.
All right, bro, pack your mittens, pack your scarf. I mean, I see Champaign, I see Iowa, I see Minnesota, and I see Columbus all in January in your crystal ball in your future, you know?
I'll be good, man. I'm ready to go.
Take care of yourself. It was a pleasure having you on, and give Johnny my best too, okay?
All right, thanks, Nestor.
You got it. Chris Nockey, longtime voice of Maryland basketball. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at xcoachnockey. That's Knoche. One of the good ones, and a great, great segment there on Maryland basketball. I'm going to bug him again. He doesn't know it, but I am. I love great guests. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's all powered up by Planet Fitness at planetfitness.com, where we're going to work off those cookies, the eggnog, the cake. Got to get some pie in me before the week is over. Planet Fitness is $10 a month. Planet of Triumphs is a great, great spot to get a little New Year's motivation. Get ahead of yourself here for January 1 as we get through this bowl season and hopefully get the Ravens playing into January as well. We will be in Pittsburgh this weekend. All things on the backfields in Owings Mills. If there's any breaking news, you get it first on the WNST Tech Service. That is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. If you're interested in our London Ravens trip next fall, it is on sale. It's under the trips tab at WNST.net. Pull the trigger. Get on the trip. Save a bunch of money right now. Guarantee yourself that you're going to be joining us for 5 days. We're doing some great stuff over there as well. All the information, nasty at WNST.net. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.